Hello everyone, good evening. Welcome to the live session for Introduction to History of Architecture of India. This is a NPTEL course by Professor Pushkar Sohani from IISER Pune. I am Shreya Shukla and I am the NPTEL TA for this course for the year 2024. Today we will be doing week 2 assignment 2. um, just to again, I have mentioned it on all the classes, I'll mention it again. In the live sessions we do previous year questions, we don't do this year's question. And yeah, so we will be doing previous year questions. So there are 20 questions that are there, 10 MCQs, and then 10 questions in which pictures have been added, and then you have to identify which is that monument. So without any further ado, we will start with the session today. So the course objective of this course is to give a brief introduction to the history of 5,000 years of architecture in India. The history of architecture in India is a narrative filled with aspirations, polities, and societies in the region. And right from the Indus Valley civilization to the modernism, architecture has defined periods, peoples, and regions all across India. So this course gives a very brief introduction to the history of 5,000 years of architecture of India, right from the Indus Valley civilization. So today we will be doing week 2 assignment 2 for previous year. There were 5 lectures in week 2, and these were the heads that were covered: Delhi Sultanate, regional sultanates, temple and mosque, Daulatabad Fort, week 2 review. So all these 5 topics were covered in 5 different lectures, and the assignments, whatever topics have been covered in these 5, whatever information has been covered in these 5 topics, the questions are based on that. So we will start now. Before starting, I'll again inform that we do previous year questions here. We don't do this year's assignments. These are all previous year questions. There might be a chance that some questions are similar. That's something else, but these are all previous year questions. The architecture of Sultanate Bengal, or the Sultanate Bengal, is characterized by the use of brick, stone, timber, all of the above. So the question is asking that the Sultanate of Bengal, or the Bengal Sultanate, what was the architecture of Bengal Sultanate characterized with? So we have options of brick, stone, timber, and all of the above. So the Bengal Sultanate was a sovereign state that encompassed present-day Bangladesh, Indian state of West Bengal, and Myanmar's state of Rakhine between 14th and 16th centuries. The Bengal Sultanate arose after the reign of Muhammad bin Tughlaq of the Tughlaq dynasty. So during the reign of Muhammad bin Tughlaq in Tughlaq dynasty, a lot of when the Delhi Sultanate weakened, the claim of the Delhi Sultanate weakened, a lot of independent sultanates arose, and Bengal Sultanate was one of those independent sultanates. So the Bengal Sultanate from 1352 to 1576, it normally used brick as the primary construction material, as pre-Islamic buildings had. So pre-Islamic buildings used to use a lot of brick in their architecture, but with the Islamic invasion, a lot of stone started being used in the buildings, in the major parts. So Bengal still used the monuments that were the Islamic monuments that were constructed under Bengal Sultanate, still used brick as the primary construction material, because Bengal did not have stone. Stone had to be imported to Bengal, and otherwise there was a lot of clay available in Bengal, which made using brick easy. So because they actually wanted to use some stone in the monuments, so a lot of buildings or the architecture of that period has that that the stone in these buildings were used for special things. For example, it might be used for some prominent details, some important details, or they were used for column bases, um, or otherwise it would be built in bricks. And another very unique thing about the buildings of this era was that the brick laying out techniques were very different, were very defined, in the sense that they used different patterns, different ways of putting the brick together. and all that is very visible in the architecture of Bengal Sultanate. So the answer is A, brick. The architecture of Bengal Sultanate is characterized by the use of brick. Question number 2. So before I go ahead with question number 2, I would just like to say that I would be going through all the questions once, and once I'm done with the questions, if you guys have any kind of doubts, you can ask me. I would try to answer it best to my capacity. In case I will not be able to answer your questions, I would answer it in the next session. What if you if you have any of the questions and any of the questions arrive to your mind, you can write it in the chat box. Once I'm done presenting the all the assignments of week 2 to you, I would start answering your questions. So you can write it in the chat box, or you can ask me directly after I'm done with the session. Yeah. Question number 2. Timurid influence on the Sultanate architecture of India was in the form of proportions, color schemes, use of decorative tiles, of all of the above. So Timurid influence here means Timur, who had his capital in Samarkand, which is in that region, which is the current day Uzbekistan. He came from there, and when he conquered the regions of Sultanate, Delhi Sultanate, and when he came and conquered all these regions, he brought a lot of different influences with him, which included a lot of things. So I will quickly explain about that. So Timurid architecture was an important stage in the architectural history of Iran and Central Asia during the late 14th and 15th centuries. In architecture, the Timurid dynasty patronized the construction of palaces, mausoleums, religious monuments across the region. Their architecture is distinguished by its grand scale, luxurious decoration in tile work, multiple minarets, polychromy tile work. Polychromy tile work in the sense that they used tile work which was composed of different colors, although blue or the lapis lazuli blue or the teal color was very prominent in their architecture. Large bulbous double domes and sophisticated geometric vaulting. This architectural style, along with other aspects of Timurid art, influenced the architecture of other empires from right from the Middle East to the Indian subcontinent. So when Timurid came to the Indian subcontinent, and he was while there was Delhi Sultanate at that time in Indian subcontinent, so he brought a lot of architecture and art styles from Samarkand to India, which included a lot of geometrical techniques, a huge amount of geometrical design using proportions started being used, and it was not just in the monuments, it was also in the arts. You could see the geometrical patterns in carpets, book pieces, miniature paintings, ornaments, textures of buildings, and in a lot of places. So more the big the characteristics that are very the characteristics of Timurid architecture, which has influenced the architecture in Indian subcontinent during the Sultanate time, included use of a lot of geometry, use of a lot of proportions, use of colored tiles, especially in the color of lapis lazuli blue or a teal blue, and the bulbous domes. So our answer is Timurid influence on the Sultanate architecture of India was in the form of proportions, it was in the form of color schemes, it was also in the form of decorative tiles. So the answer is all of the above. So question number 3. The fort of Bidar was built by Sultans of Gujarat, Sultans of Bijapur, the Bahmani Sultans, Kings of Vijayanagar. So Bidar is located in Karnataka, and I would just tell you a few things about the fort of Bidar before answering this question. So Bidar fort is located in Old City area, Bidar, Karnataka, India. Bidar was the capital of Bahmani kingdom in the 14th century, And Bahmani Sultanate or Bahmani Kingdom was another independent sultanate which arose after the fall of Delhi Sultanate. When the claim was weakened, a lot of independent sultanates emerged. Bahmani Sultanate was one of those. The fort was built by Ahmad Shah Wali Bahmani as he shifted his capital from Gulbarg, Gulbarga to Bidar. He built his fort along with several Islamic monuments there. There are over 30 monuments inside the Bidar fort. Bidar fort is considered as one of the most formidable forts of the century of the country. Bidar city was distinctly planned and built. The main citadel complex housed the royal palaces, mahals, and mosques. Adjoining to this, on the southern side, the city was built for the people. The Bidar fort has stood witness to a lot of historical milestones: the rise and fall of Bahmani dynasty, rise and separation of the five Deccan sultans, capture by the Barid Shahi and Adil Shahi dynasties, and finally being won by the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb in the blockade of Bidar in 1657. The complex was also put by UNESCO on its tentative list to become a World Heritage Site in 2014. So our answer is the fort of Bidar was built by the Bahmani Sultans of Karnataka. Question number 4. Hammams were lit and ventilated by small openings in the roof, large windows on the black wall, artificial ventilation and light, all of the above. So, hammams were basically, you can say, sauna of the old times. It was a Turkish civic bath or a common bath area, and which used different temperatures and especially steam bath in it. And because hammams were built in older times, so of course the option of artificial ventilation and light is not possible. And because this the concept of hammam in basically it's a steam room or a sauna bath, so you need to have that play actually locked up to be able to get the steam, enjoy the steam bath. So, which also I'm trying to answer this logically, which also rules out the option B, large windows on the back wall. Because if you will have large windows, then the steam cannot be contained in the hammam. Then, which means that the logical answer would be small openings in the roof. Now, I will quickly talk about hammams. So, a hammam, it's also called a Turkish bath. It's a type of steam bath or a place of public bathing associated with the Islamic world. It is a prominent feature in the culture of the Muslim world and was inherited from the model of the Roman thermae. Roman thermae is also a kind of steam bath in the Roman era. In Islamic cultures, the significance of the hammam was both religious and civic. It provided for the needs of ritual ablutions, but also provided for general hygiene in an era before private plumbing and several other social functions, such as offering a gendered meeting place for men and for women. While there were many elaborate hammams in private palaces and mansions, few Indian hammams were as important as those of Muslim cities further west. Delhi, Hyderabad, Bhopal in India still have multiple working Turkish baths which date back to the Mughal period in the early 16th century. Now, because the lectures talk about the hammams in Daulatabad Fort, so and the picture also I've added here is of the hammam of Daulatabad Fort. I have added some details about it. The hammam situated within the Mahakot area in the Daulatabad Fort was constructed during the Tughlaq period. These chambers were used as Caladrium hot rooms for massages and hot water baths. The water flowed from one room to the next by earthen pipes. The structure was made of stone, plastered with lime mortar, and its chambers were adorned with stucco work. The lighting for this complete building is only through small skylights, which are called nurgirs or light catchers. So, the answer is small openings in the roof. Hammams were lit and ventilated by small openings in the roof. It's a logical answer, as well as these small openings in the roof or the skylights were called nurgirs. Question number 5. The Great Mosque of Daulatabad, now called the Bharat Mata Mandir, shows a complete break in architectural tradition of the region, a continuity of architectural tradition of the region, the movement of artisans from Gujarat and the arrival of masons from the Delhi Sultanate. So Daulatabad is a fort area in Daulatabad, earlier known as Devgiri, which is situated near Aurangabad in Maharashtra. It is now called Bharat Mata Mandir. So the options here are given that the Great Mosque of Daulatabad. What of these following four statements does it represent? So to understand that, I would quickly talk about that. So first I'll talk about Daulatabad Fort, and then I will talk about the Daulatabad Mosque. So Daulatabad Fort, originally called Deogiri Fort, it's a historic fortified citadel located in Daulatabad village near Aurangabad, Maharashtra, India. It has been the central point for at least four dynasties. It was the capital of the Yadavs in 9th century to 14th century. For a brief time, a capital of Delhi Sultanate, and later a secondary capital of Ahmednagar Sultanate or the Tughlaq dynasty. Most of the present day fortifications of Daulatabad fort were constructed under the Ahmednagar Sultanate. And two of the famous buildings in the Daulatabad fort are Chand Minar and Chini Mahal. Chand Minar was built by Bahmani Sultan Hassan Gangu Bahmani as a replica of the Qutub Minar of Delhi, of which he was a great fan of. And he also employed Iranian architects to build the minar who used lapis lazuli and red ochre for coloring. Lapis lazuli is a stone found in the Central Asian region. Chini Mahal, it was a VIP prison built by Aurangzeb. In this prison, he kept Abul Hasan Qutb Shah of the Golconda Sultanate of Hyderabad. Also, so Daulatabad fort has actually three layers. So the innermost hill is said that it was during the capital, when it was the capital of Yadavas. Then we have first ring, which is called um, uh, just a second, it's called Mahakot, Amberkot. I have it written somewhere, I have just lost that. So there are three layers. I'm forgetting the name of the three layers. I will. There's one answer which is related with that later. I will talk about it. So there are three different layers, and three different layers or the three different layers of fortification happened because this was such a strategic location, and this held so much importance that in every dynasty that came here, they created another fortified wall and expanded the capital. So this is the Great Mosque at Daulatabad Fort, and so the question here they asked was that the Great Mosque at Daulatabad Fort, what does it represent? So what happened during the construction of this Daulatabad mosque is that uh, Anwa, basically Anwa, the temple at Anwa in Devgiri was constructed during Yadav period. And 70 years after that temple construction, this mosque was built there. So the temple of Anwa is considered to be heavily inspired by the corbelling technique and based square with columns with a dome on top, which was common in Gujarat based on stone. So that traveled here, and then this temple at Anwa used that technique and built that temple. 70 years after that temple, when Khilji took over this area, Daulatabad, and he built this mosque here, he got inspired from that dome of the Anwa temple, and he built the same thing. He wanted that the square pillars along with the dome on it and the corbelling technique to be used in the mosque too. So what happened here was that it is considered that this dome is thus heavily inspired from the architecture of Gujarat or the temple architecture of Gujarat. So what happens here right now is that artisans who built this mosque or who built the Anwar temple at Anwar, the builders or the artisans, they don't think about religion, class or creed. they know methods of construction of their own region. So when this uh, the rulers saw this style of construction in Gujarat, architecture, where in square they had columns there, and then there was a dome on top. So they came here and then they asked them to build it over here. So because it was, they did not see it and they only interpreted what they understood from it, they designed it based on what they learned. And 70 years later, when this mosque is built and then the same technique is used in this mosque, is because artisans learned it through their different generations. The dome is arranged on columns the in the mosque. The domes that are arranged on the columns, it is very similar to that of Temple in Ranwa. And this shows that the artisans, craftsmen, and the builders, architects have fidelity to the region, to the material that they build, and to the technique they use. The fidelity is not towards religion, but or the kind of architecture they are asked to build. It is not towards religion or the kind of architecture they are to build. It is only about the use of material and the techniques they use. So if even after there has been this 70 years of difference between the Temple of Anwa and the Great Mosque, the techniques used are same, the construction techniques used are same, because the artisans gave passed on that knowledge to their next generations, and the people living in that generation learned those things from their ancestors, so they use the same methods or the same construction technique. They build in the ways that they know best, and these ways involve local materials and local construction techniques. It does not matter if the design was imported from Gujarat, but they built in the way they knew best. So the Great Mosque of Daulatabad, which is now called the Bharat Mata Mandir, it shows a continuity of architectural traditions of the region. So which basically means that the construction of Temple of Anwa, which imported this technique from Gujarat of columns and then dome above it in stone, that same technique was 70 years later used in a mosque. So this great mosque of Daulatabad, it shows that people learn architectural traditions, artists, craftsmen, they learn these techniques through their generations. The religion or the kind of building they are building, it does not matter. The religion, class, creed doesn't. What matters to them is the construction technique that has been passed to them. So it's a continuity of architectural traditions of that region, of the people who live there, who have their ancestry, who got this knowledge from their elders. So the answer is a continuity of architectural traditions of the region. Coming to question number 6. Chand Minar was built in Delhi, Bidar, Daulatabad, Golconda. Chand Minar, or the Tower of the Moon, is a medieval tower in Daulatabad, India. The tower is located in the Strait of Maharashtra near the Daulatabad Devgiri Fort complex. It was erected in 1445 CE by King Alauddin Bahmani to commemorate his capture of the fort. So Alauddin Bahmani was heavily inspired by Qutub Minar. He was really inspired, and the Qutub Minar, which was built by Qutubuddin Aibak, was a tower to show the victory. It was not a minaret in a religious precinct. It was just a tower inspired by which just represented victory. So Alauddin Bahmani was how heavily inspired with that, and he built Chand Minar in the Daulatabad Fort complex for the specific reasons. Chand Minar bears resemblance to the Qutub Minar of Delhi and was inspired from it. Chand Minar is considered to be among the finest specimens of Indo-Islamic architecture in southern India. Why? Because you can see that the Chand Minar, and then you see the balconies that are projected from here, if you can see those. You see the brackets on those balcony, that's a very typical Indian or Hindu architecture bracket. So it's a big example of Indo-Islamic architecture in southern India. It's 63 meters high and it is divided into 4 stories and 24 chambers. A small mosque or praying hall sits at the base of the tower, which is covered with Persian blue tiles. The tower also displays some indigenous Indian architectural features, such as the brackets supporting its balconies, which I was just talking about. The tower's height makes it visible from every corner of the Daulatabad fort. So the Chand Minar was built in Daulatabad. Our answer is Daulatabad. Question number 7. Water distribution technologies of the sultanates allowed cities to be sited far away from the flowing water, comprised of pipes and conduits, used imported technologies like canals, or all of the above. So, a few of the most important things that happened during the sultanates, during the Delhi Sultanate periods, which consisted of 5 dynasties, was the water distribution technologies that emerged. So, in typical Indian cities before the Islamic rule established in India, it was, you can say, the pattern was that the Indian cities flourished near source of water or near rivers. They settled so that they have a perennial source of water. So they settled near the rivers so that they have a perennial source of water. That was a very, you can say, Indian way of cities being established before the Islamic rulers came in. So what they brought with themselves was water distribution technologies, and the main reason for this was that so that they can actually build in places where they want to build their cities instead of being forced to build the cities near the water sources. So they started all these water distribution technologies. They brought the water distribution technologies from the Central Asia and the Middle East regions, whatever was happening in their countries, they brought those things here so that then they can create cities and places with strategic location where they wanted it, but also get water source to run the city. So Indian cities are always along riverbanks where you have a perennial source of water. Technology by the sultanates at the water system which allow them to build cities in place where you could never imagine them. They built massive artificial reservoirs with a number of palace buildings on the side. They also brought with them a Persian wheel by which you can harvest water, and gear transforms the circular laborious movement by a pair of ox into a vertical wheel so that the water can be pulled out. In Gujarat, the sultans of Gujarat in the 15th century built the Hauze Qutub, which is now called Kankaria Lake, a perfect circular water body in which the water would a whole system of hydrology was understood to build this Kankaria Lake, where water would collect, have it naturally channel itself into the depression in low-lying areas, and how it could be tapped to fill up great reservoirs, and how from these reservoirs the water will be distributed through a network of underground pipes into settlements that the sultans built. The other system that was built over particularly from Iran was the system of water are called qanats, where you tap into a higher water table quite a distance away, maybe 12 to 15 kilometers, and essentially create a horizontal tunnel with a very mild slope punctuated by vertical shafts, which will bring water continuously and perennially to areas that you desire a water supply. So the answer is all of the above. The water distribution technologies that the sultanates brought, they allowed cities to be sited far away from flowing water. They comprised of pipes and conduits, and they used imported technologies like qanats, which is from Iran. So the answer is D, all of the above. Question number 8. The defense features of the fort of Daulatabad included wild animals, thorny hedges, dark tunnel passages, mines. So yeah, Daulatabad represents an example of great Sultanate military architecture. The Kala Coat, so this is what I was talking about, these three layers. So we have in center hill, which was during the Yadav period. Then we have Kala Coat. Then we have another concentric called Mahakot, and then we have Ambar Coat. The Kala Coat was built by the Bahamanis, Mahakot was built by the Nizam Shahs, and the Ambar Coat was built by Malik Ambar. At the center of all this, on that carved hill, are remains of fortifications which probably date from the Yadav period. Once you get past, so I will just talk about the different defense mechanisms of all these three layers. So there were moats uh, after the Kalakot boundary wall, and then after the moats there are a number of dark passages that are carved inside the rock, and they were done to create traps, and yeah, and they were built during the Sultanate period. And then in Mahakot, there were a series of courtyards, because there was an entrance and then there was hammam, and you will have a series of courtyards to enter that place. And they were arranged in a way so that in case of a battle, constantly in the eyes of the defenders. So there would be series of courtyards, and they are arranged such that if you enter these courtyards, you would always be surrounded by people who are defending the fort. So that was the defense mechanism they used in Mahakot. And then in Amberkot has all the classic military features of a fort in Sultanate India in 15th and 16th century. In a lot of places, wall has what is called a fosse bry, which is a two-level wall, but most importantly, it has an earthwork work called the glacis. So, uh, so glacis is a defense feature, and which allows the walls to not be breached by cannon. uh, so what happens in glacis is that it's a this the Fossebrae used in number code, the defense mechanism used, has two wall system. So what happens in this is, um, in between two walls there is a moat, okay, and then after this short wall there is a huge slope. So it's really difficult to get past this wall, because it's really difficult to breach the walls, because the slopes don't allow you to bring your cannons up. So, amongst the things that have been listed here in this question specifically, wild animals, thorny hedges, mines, dark tunnel passages, the only one that falls in one of the defense mechanisms of Daulatabad is the dark tunnel passages, which was done to confuse the invaders, in the sense that there were dark, long tunnel passages, and then they would get confused that where is actually the exit. So that was one of the defense mechanisms. So amongst all these lists here, the answer would be C, because other defense mechanisms have not been listed here, which included fossebrae, or the use of moats, or the use of slopes, or the cascading courtyards. Also, it has been said in a few places that the moats surrounding these walls, they used to have wild animals. For example, they could have had crocodile, but then there has not been any proof found. So that's why the A option also does not stay valid, because there has not been a proof found that these moats also had crocodiles. So the answer is dark tunneled passageways. Coming back to question number 9. The Mosque of Siddhi Said is best known for its large size, a very big dome, ornamental screens, and deep courtyard. So, Siddhi Said Mosque, popularly known as Siddhi Said Ni Jali, it was built in 1578 AD, and it is one of the famous mosques of Ahmedabad. And mosque was built by Siddhi Said, a Habshi nobleman, and 1572-73. The mosque is entirely arcuate and is known for its integratively carved stone lattice work windows, or jalis, on the side and rear arches. So the Siddhi Said Mosque is heavily inspired by the local architecture of that place. Gujarat has known to be, and the temples in Gujarat, the Hindu and Jain temples specifically, they had this jali work, which is very indigenous to the place because of the really high temperature in the region. The jali actually provides protection from the sun, and is also lets the air pass through and cool through. So it has a lot of climatic reasons why jali work was prevalent in Gujarat, and that was adopted in the mosque or the Islamic architecture that was built in there. So Sidi Sayed Mosque is quite famous for the carved stone lattice work that they have done, because they have put a lot of detailed carved stone lattice work. In this picture you can see this detailed jali work that I have put. It's one of the jali works from Sidi Said Mosque. The rear wall is filled with square stone pierced panels and geometric designs, and the central have reticulated stone slabs carved in designs of intertwined trees and foliage and a palm motif. There are also, not in the form of jali, but there are also stone carvings of Kalpuriksh in the Sidi Said Mosque. The intricately carved lattice stone window is the Siddhi Said Jali, and this Jali, this intricately carved lattice stone Jali, it's called the Siddhi Said Jali, the picture I've added. It's the unofficial symbol of the city of Ahmedabad and the inspiration for the design of the logo of IAM Ahmedabad. And I've added this picture here. If you can see that there is this square jali work, then there is this intricate jali, and of which the image I added before. And this is a picture of Siddhi Said Mosque, so you can see how um, different it is compared to other Islamic architecture of Indian subcontinent. So the answer is, the mosque of Siddhi Said is best known for its large size, a very big dome, see ornamental screen or the courtyard. So the answer is C, ornamental screens. Last question of the verbal questions, and then we will do the visual questions. The Sultans of Gujarat patronized an architectural vocabulary that derives from the Sultanate of Bengal, Vijayanagar, Hindu and Jain temples, or Herat. So we know that Sultanate of Bengal had a very different architecture. They used bricks instead of stone because it was difficult to import stones there. Similarly, all these sultanates, like Sultanate of Bengal, Sultanate of Gujarat also had its peculiar ideas, or the architecture that was heavily inspired by the region. So, like I explained about the Siddhi Side Mosque, how they have incorporated all the Jali work inspired from the India pre-Islamic architecture existed in India. They have also taken a lot of inspiration from the Hindu and Jain temples. So, the Hindu and Jain temples in Gujarat have uh, a really detailed stonework. They have really detailed stonework. We have seen some Jain temple examples, or you would have seen some Jain temple examples. Might have visited a real Jain temple, or you would have seen some Jain temple examples in the previous lectures of this course on NPTEL. So the Hindu and Jain temples in Gujarat at that time, they were heavily carved and stone carved, and they had jalis in them, and then they had these ideas of columns and then having a dome above it, or small columns with heavy domes on it. So all those ideas were brought in the architectural vocabulary of the mosques and mausoleums that the sultans of Gujarat built. So the Islamic monuments that they built, they were heavily inspired by the Hindu and Jain temples, because again the reason would be the same that was given for the fort, for the mosque of Daulatabad fort, that the artisans knew how to do this. And also the sultans of Gujarat, they were quite impressed by it, so they incorporated heavy ornamentation into their buildings in stone, and also the jali work. So the answer is Hindu and Jain temples. So 10 questions were done of the verbal part. Now we will go for the visual part. So like last time, I have not added details about the visual questions. There are 10 visual questions, so there are total 20 questions in this for this session. I'm done with 10. I'll go through the next 10. Then we can start the question answer round. So I will talk verbally about it. So for to be able to answer these questions, these visual questions. In these visual questions, you are given a picture and then you are asked to identify which building is this. So to be able to answer it, you have to be very versed with how the different buildings look like. Otherwise, you will not be able to answer the questions. So yeah, this is something that you will have to do for the course to be able to recognize these buildings. Some of the examples are very famous, so you will be able to easily identify them, and some of them, if you go through the lectures, you will be able to understand. So yeah, so this building, a picture has been given, and it has been asked to identify the following, and then the four options that have been given are, it's Jami Mosque of Ahmedabad, Delhi, Daulatabad, or Gulbarg. So this is actually a picture of Jami Mosque in Ahmedabad. This is also called Jumma Mosque or Jama Masjid. It was built in 1424 during the reign of Ahmad Shah I, and it it's one of the biggest mosques of that time, and so Ahmedabad was set up as a capital in around 1400s, and it was very far away from the rule of Delhi Sultanate, which helped Ahmedabad to develop the Gujarat Sultanate, to develop its own style of architecture. And it in this architectural style, it is a mix of, like I explained in the previous question, it's a mix of Islamic architecture and traditional Hindu and Jain temple architectural elements. And Jama Masjid is one of the examples of the typical Gujarat Sultanate mosque style, or sorry, Gujarat's architecture of Gujarat Sultanate style, or the Gujarat style of architecture in Ahmedabad. And also, this mosque is built in yellow sandstone, and it's a whole complex that has it. And there is a porch entrance to Jama Mosque, which is heavily inspired from the uh, Hindu temples, because it had a porch supported by pillars, which was a common sight in Hindu and Jain temples, and it was elevated on steps on each side and had a roof. So yeah, and also the carvings in this mosque is also heavily inspired by temple architecture. Had domes carved with lotus carvings, which is very common in Jain temples, and also the carvings in some of the pillars was also very heavily inspired from Hindu temple pillars. So the answer is, this is Jami Mosque, Ahmedabad. So again, there is this image of a temple given, and then you have been asked to answer which temple it is. So the four options that have been given here are Brihadeshwar Temple, Tanjore, Gondeshwar Temple, Sinnar, Grishneshwar Temple, Ellora, Pashupatinath Temple, Kathmandu. So this image is actually of Gondeshwar Temple in Sinnar. The Gondeshwar Temple, it's a 11th century Hindu temple located in Sinnar, and Sinnar is a town in Nasik district of Maharashtra. And this is a Shiv temple, and it's a typical example of Bhumija type of temple, which I have, if you have gone through the NPTEL lectures, or if you attended the first live session, I have explained about the Bhumija type of temples. So this is a great example of Bhumija type of temple. And yeah, so it's a 14th century temple dedicated to Shiva, and it follows the typical architecture style of a Bhumija temple with a mandap and a shikhara. So the answer is Gondeshwar Temple, Sinnar. Identify the following. So this image has been given, and then you are asked to identify what is this image that has been given here. So it is actually called this. It's a Dead Sea Scroll or Topkapi Scroll or Lost Gospels or Indian Craft Manual. So this is actually a Topkapi scroll, and this was brought in by Timur, and it's a Timurid dynasty pattern scroll. So what is this scroll used for mainly was that all like I explained in the previous question, one of the questions about Timurid dynasty, that they brought ornaments and heavily used geometry, and then that geometrical patterns were used everywhere, from miniature painting to carvings to buildings to books. Everywhere those geometric patterns were used. So they used to actually make those things, make the patterns that they arrived geometrically. They used to document those in these scrolls, which are called Topkapi scroll. And it is it used to basically, this scroll has all these different patterns and how they can be used, the different color combinations that are there, and it's a huge valuable source of information, and it has like 114 patterns that may have been used both indirectly and directly by architects to create the tiling patterns in many mosques around the world. And yeah, so this is it. So this is a Topkapi scroll. So next question is that image has been given, and you have been asked to again identify which one is this. Which mosque is this? Mm, so yeah, so this is actually the Jama Mosque in Daulatabad, sorry, Daulatabad, and I have already shown its picture to you somewhere. And this mosque was built by Khilji rulers of Delhi, and it is adorned with 106 carved columns and pillars that were looted from several Hindu and Jain temples. So basically, the columns you see in this picture, these are all columns of Hindu and Jain temples that have been used in the construction of this mosque. And like I already mentioned, this mosque has a dome sitting on a rectangular grid of columns inspired by the Gujarat style of architecture, from the architecture. So the answer is Jami Mosque, Daulatabad. Now, again, this image has been added, and you have been asked to identify which one of the buildings it's this. So, the options are Palace of Bahmani Sultans Bidar, Palace of Gujarat Sultans Champaner, Mosque in Bidar, Madrasa of Mahmud Kawan Bidar. So one feature that I will tell you that will might help you in identifying these buildings is that in Bidar, which is Bahmani Sultanate, which is located in Karnataka, they were as compared to the architecture in the other parts of India in different sultanates. For example, Bengal Sultanate uses bricks in their Islamic architecture. The Gujarat Sultanate used heavily the use of jalis in their architecture. the architecture of this region under Bahmani Sultans, they were heavily inspired by the Timurid architecture, and thus they had these colorful tiles uh, used in there, which was not common in other parts of India, which was not being used like that in other parts of India. The buildings were constructed out of stone easily, but then this intrication of level of detailing, it was heavily inspired by uh, the Timurid architecture. So this building is actually one side image of Madrasa of Mahmud Gawan Bidar. It's a madrasa, or madrasa is an Islamic school located in Bidar, Karnataka. It was built in 1460s, and it's an example of Indo-Islamic architecture under the Bahmani Sultanate. And it is one of the monuments of national importance. And it is currently being preserved by Architectural Survey of India. And yeah, this is all. So this is actually Madrasa of Mahmud Gawan Bidar. Question 16. Identify the following: Qutub Minar, Delhi; Chand Minar, Daulatabad; Hiran Minar, Lahore; Char Minar, Hyderabad. So I've already shown you this image. This is actually Chand Minar from Daulatabad, and we know that this is again an example of Indo-Islamic architecture in which this was inspired by Qutub Minar heavily, and built to show the victory of the place, just as a symbol of victory or symbol of pride. But it is very significantly different from Qutub Minar because it has these balconies here, which are supported on brackets that are heavily inspired or taken from Hindu Jain temples. So the answer is Chand Minar, Daulatabad. Now this is again an image given, and you have to identify which mosque is this. The options are Atala Mosque, or Kali Mosque, Patna; Jami Mosque, Aurangabad; Gateway to Mahalakshmi Temple, Kolhapur. So this is actually Atala Mosque in Jaunpur, and it is located in Jaunpur, Uttar Pradesh. And this is a huge gateway that has been built. There is a central dome in this mosque, which is almost 17 meters high, but it cannot be really seen because of this huge tower gate in front that you can see. You cannot see the dome in the back because of this huge tower gate. It was built in 14th century, and yeah, this is all I know about this architecture. This is also an example of Indo-Islamic architecture, and it is called Atal Mosque because it was built on the this was built by Firoz Shah Tughlaq, and he built this mosque by demolishing the Atal Devi temple, and thus that's why it's called Atal Mosque, Atla Devi Temple, Atla Mosque. And the height of this is more than around 100 feet, and there are huge gateways, like you can see in this picture. This is a huge gateway. It's so huge that you cannot even see the mosque. And the construction was started by Firoz Shah Tughlaq, but it was completed by somebody else under Jaunpur Sultanate. Yeah, so this is Atla Mosque, Jaunpur, which was built on the demolitions of Atla Devi Temple in Jaunpur. So so again, one picture of a building has been given, and then you are asked to identify which building is it. Is it a building in Bidar, 15th century? Is it a building in Gujarat, 15th century? Is it a building in Malwa, or is it a building in Bengal? So I gave a few little details I had about these regions, and I have explained it to you. So when I explained about the Bengal architecture or the Bengal Sultanate architecture, I mentioned to you that the stone was a scarce and it had to be imported from somewhere, which is why they started using brick for the construction of all the Islamic buildings, which included mosques and tombs and other things. However, because it was scarce and it was imported, the stone was used for important things. So there are two reasons that these bases usually were made of stone. First was that the buildings that were constructed from scratch used the stones they had, the limited stone they had, in the construction of the base of the buildings or for important symbols or the carvings that they needed to add. Other things were built in the brick. The second reason why they could be of stone from below and then of bricks on top was because a lot of temples were demolished and the mosques were built over them. So the down part could also be the remain of a temple which was built in stone. So this was the typical architectural style common in Indo-Islamic architectural style common in Sultanate of Bengal. So the answer is D, building in Bengal, 14th century. So again, this image has been given, and you are asked to identify uh, which building is it. So options are Tomb of Mahmud Gawan Bidar, Tomb of Ali Adil Shah Bijapur, Tomb of Ghiazuddin Tughlaq Delhi, Tomb of Akbar Sikandar. Just a second, excuse me. So the this is a tomb of Ghiazuddin Tughlaq in Delhi, and this tomb stands near the Tughlaqabad fort in southern Delhi. And Ghiazuddin Tughlaq was a ruler of Sultanate of Delhi in early 1300s, and yeah, it's made out of sandstone and marble, and that's all I know about this mosque actually. So this is actually the tomb of Ghiazuddin Tughlaq in Delhi. This would be built around the 12th centuries. Yeah, it's although in a very proper preserved. It's properly conserved because we know the Sultanate of Delhi faced a lot of defeat and Tughlaq dynasty also fell. But and Tughlaq dynasty actually crumbled and weakened, but this tomb still remains very well preserved to this day. So, tomb of Ghiazuddin Tughlaq, Delhi. Last question for today. And the question is that you have to identify what is this image, and the options are elephant stables in Vijayanagar, palace of the king of Vijayanagar, fort of Bidar, Jami mosque, Bijapur. So Vijayanagar was again a South Indian kingdom of Karnataka, and Vijayanagar was formed after they rebelled against the Delhi Sultanate, and they were trying to gain an independent dynasty. Vijayanagar, this elephant stable in Vijayanagar, this is right now located what is modern day Hampi, and this is actually an elephant stable, and it was used to provide shelter for elephants of Vijayanagar. And yeah, and the architecture style is very Indo-Islamic style, and although it was the Vijayanagar dynasty was in opposition of was established trying they were trying to establish them as the independent kingdom, but they still used a lot of inspiration from the Indo-Islamic architecture, and the architecture during the Vijayanagar in the Vijayanagar kingdom is an example of using Indo-Islamic architecture under the rule of non-Islamic rulers. So the domes are very much inspired by the temple architecture of India in variety of shapes, circular, ribbed, and others. And yeah, that's all. So this is the last question for today, and it's the elephant stables of Vijayanagar, modern day Hampi. So if anybody has any questions, please ask. I will try to answer as per my capacity and knowledge. In case I will not be able to answer a question, I will do it in the next session. Hope this was hope this session for today was helpful. If anybody has any questions, please kindly ask. You can type it in the chat box. I would answer it as per my capacity. The previous live session video, you can't find it. NPTEL must have sent you the link. They would have sent you because I received the email that they have uploaded it finally. Please check your email from which you registered for the course. You would have it in email. NPTEL online courses, NPTEL would have sent you an email. Just check your email from which you registered for the course. You would find it. They would have sent an email. Yeah, please. I try not to turn the mic on because it creates a lot of echo and noise, and then I find it better that you ask your question in the chat box and then I can answer it easily. The last slide, and okay, sure. This is elephant stables in Vijayanagar, where they kept their modern day Karnataka. You can say Vijayanagar kingdom was in Karnataka. So it's long chambers in which elephants were used to keep, and you can see very clearly that the arches are there. So it's a example of Indo-Islamic architecture, and it has been also said that even though Vijayanagar kingdom they tried to be an independent kingdom away from the Delhi Sultanate, they still continued the Indo-Islamic architectural in their monuments. So you can see the use of arches here, which is an Islamic architectural element, and you can see the domes on the top of the building, which are heavily inspired from the Indian Hindu temples. And also you can see the use of extreme symmetry. Uh, I don't think we can easily identify by just looking at the building, but I think you can probably get that information based on what has been recorded over these years. So many scholars, so many historians, so many archaeologists have studied these monuments, and they have documented how these buildings came into being. So they would have a better insight. They had a better insight. They know how to identify those things, and that's why that information is documented and present to us. So if there is any monument that you would like to search about, you can search, and I think the information about it would be available. Usually, but it's really easy to identify the architecture where about this, because the typical things that they do was, it was easy because it was easier to do this, that they would demolish the upper part of the temple, and because they would have the typical foundation and the columns erect, it was easier to build a mosque over it, because then they had to only construct the dome and other things, they had the structure available with them. So if you go through come across a building which looks like an Islamic structure, which has a dome on top and has arches, but the columns are detailed or have the carving of Hindu temple, then probably mostly there would be mosques built above the temples. Otherwise, when Indian Hindu architecture or the temple architecture elements, when they are integrated in the building, you would have some elements which were integrated. For example, the Sidi Sayyid Mosque, it has the elements of Hindu and Jain temples integrated in it, in the sense that they have carvings and other things. But if it's a building which has actually been constructed over the demolition of Hindu temple, it will be very quite, I think, quite visible that the columns would have that level of detailing, and then the above structure is completely different. However, to be able to exactly identify, I think the scholars would have documented it in a better way. So I think that information can be available to us now. Saithej Shiv Kumar, what questions are different? I didn't understand. In this session, we do previous year questions. We don't do this year's question. There might be some similarity in questions of this year, but these are previous year questions. These are not this year's question. And these questions have been given to me. I have accessed these questions via NPTEL only, but these are previous year questions which has been specifically, the access has been given to me for previous year questions. So these are not this year's question, Mr. Shivkumar. So like I was saying, Shreya, that if it's actually a typical example where the elements are incorporated, so you would see that the elements are incorporated. Like for example, even in this last slide that I have seen, that this is a monument built during the in Vijayanagar, built under the rule of Hindu kings. But you see how this is an example of Indo-Islamic architecture. It becomes because you see some Islamic elements, for example, the arch, and you see some uh, Hindu temple architecture elements like the domes on top with ribbed designs and other things. So combining it is different, but I think umbrella term for both these things, whether it was constructed over a temple or if the element was incorporated in the building, I think the combined term that is used for it is Indo-Islamic architecture only. Please ask any questions you guys have. I will try to answer it. If anybody has any questions, please kindly ask. If nobody has any questions, we can conclude the meeting. If you have any questions, please kindly ask. If nobody has any questions, we can conclude the meeting. If anybody has any questions, please ask. If you don't have any questions, we can conclude the meeting. Just please let me know what you would like. In the week 3 of the lecture, which we will do next Monday, we would cover Maratha architecture and Mughal architecture in that lecture. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . Since nobody has any questions, I am concluding the meeting. Thank you all for joining. I hope you learned something from today. See you next Monday. Bye.